If you're in a relationship with a gambler, particularly if you believe their gambling may be getting a bit out of control. Also, if you are a gambler whose gambling may be out of control and you're in a long-term relationship, then I ask you to please watch this video. And I know it's a very, very YouTubery thing to say, but I do please ask that you watch the video to the end, because what I want to do is share a very personal story. It's one I might get quite emotional over. And it's a story from my time gambling that could have taken my life in two very distinctive directions. It's a story that very nearly drove a wedge between myself and my partner, who is now, very thankfully, my wife. But I do believe there is a message, a moral, if you will, from my negative experiences, which could be a lesson to people like myself. But it also could serve as a bit of a warning or a bit of an indicator and a red flag to those people who may be getting concerned about their partner's gambling habits. Obviously, I very first want to say hi, hope you're keeping safe, hope you're keeping sane. I will refrain from my normal self-promotion, but if you do wish to support the channel, you know exactly what to do. I will also very quickly mention that I have a nose infection, sinus infection, so my face is really swollen. So if I slur my speech or I keep biting my tongue or whatever and swearing a lot, then my apologies in advance, all right? This memory, this story that I want to tell today was prompted in some capacity by a couple of comments I had recently, both from people who are concerned about their partner's gambling, and one in particular rang very, very true with my experiences, as it reminded me very much of my former self. This lady said that her partner gets paid and all the bills are covered. The rent is covered, they've always got food. All essential expenses and payments are covered. So in that sense, their financial situation wasn't at a state of catastrophe. However, she did go on to say she was worried about his gambling because it would take no time at all for any money that was left over to be lost in whatever capacity that might have been. And that rang very true with me, because that was very similar to my story. I used to get paid. I used to ensure, or more certainly the way I'd set my accounts up, used to ensure that all essential costs were covered, but then any disposable income that I had was very, very quickly disposed of. What this did, because I found that all my essential costs were covered, to me that served almost as reassurance that my gambling wasn't as bad as it could have been. I wasn't in arrears with my rent, I wasn't having utilities cut off, I wasn't getting threatening letters through the post because certain things hadn't been paid. This allowed me to bury my head in the sand and completely blissfully ignore the fact that most of the money that I had coming in on top of that was being lost almost instantly after it had come in. It also gave me the capacity to defend myself should there be any question about my gambling activity or indeed my own financial management. If my wife, for example, was to question, my financial situation, then I could quite easily say, well, it's absolutely fine. We've got a roof over our heads, we're not struggling, everything's paid. And quite often I would do this in a more defensive and conflicting way. Obviously, I have to acknowledge that different relationships and different couples have their finances set up in different ways. Certainly there's a large number of married couples who believe and work on the principle that all money coming in from either partner is shared. It goes into a joint account and everything comes out of that. Now, certainly, in terms of gambling transparency, that is, one block, because if your partner can see all your transactions, then you immediately become accountable for all your expenditure. However, it does lay the partner open to significant financial risk should that person's gambling become out of control, because that can cause very significant financial damage very quickly. Other couples have completely separate finances. Maybe one pays the mortgage and one pays the bills, whatever. Okay, and there is the third group, and this includes myself and my wife, where we pay into a joint account proportional to our income, and everything that's essential comes out of that, as well as mutual expenditure, so takeaways, meals out, things for the house, all that sort of thing. That's the situation that, that's the system that we use, and so far, so good. So this meant that I had my own pot of money which I could do what I wanted with, or more specifically, my addiction could do what it wanted with, and that inevitably was to gamble it very, very rapidly after it had come in until there was none left. So this should in and of itself be a massive red flag that I was gambling. However, the more significant point of this was when it came to conversations regards money, regards expenditure, and regards plans with my partner, now wife. Quite often, my wife would get sort of slightly upset. She has friends who are sort of quite high earners, or, to be fair, in many instances, they are reasonably wealthy through inheritance or other means. But either way, she would have to witness them buying new cars, going on fancy holidays, doing all of these sorts of things. Now, I will say very, very clearly that my wife is in no way spoiled or entitled. However, there are things that she would witness other people doing that she wished she could do. And I guess that's the same for all of us. That's just standard envy, isn't it? But the difference was, in this situation, at the time I had a fair amount of money coming in, and I could quite easily, had I not been gambling, facilitated a lot of these things that she would like. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that she's spoiled or she would expect me to go out and spend this money, but when you see the person that you love, the person that you are planning to spend the rest of your life with, and they are there, they're getting upset because they literally can't buy a new pair of jeans, but you know that you've gone and lost £1,000 in the last couple of weeks on fob tees, that's a very, very hard thing to deal with. And it made me incredibly sensitive to the topic of money. Anytime money would come up, I would become incredibly defensive. If my wife said, shall we go out and buy a new kettle because our one's taken a bit too long to boil, I would become very defensive and go, well, the kettle we've got's all right. We're not made of money. We can't. Knowing full well that in literally the past 48 hours, I could have bought shares in Morphy Richards. But one specific time, and this is the story that came to mind immediately, it was coming towards the end of the month. My wife popped out to the supermarket to get some essentials. She came home with a few bits and pieces, but I saw the receipt from the shop on the side. It was for not a lot of money, 12 quid or something like that, just a few bits. But I could see at the bottom, it said minus £1.34, and I do remember it was £1.34. And I noticed that she'd put back or taken off, one of the items that she'd gone in to buy, and that was kitchen roll. Because we'd run out of money. There was no money left in the joint account, and the fact that she had to go through that, she'd had to go and put back this, I guess questionably, essential item, and it was fine, and we can live without kitchen roll for a week. But she'd gone through that, and I remember that the day before that, I'd drawn a couple of £100 out of cash point and just gone and lost it in no time at all in fruit machines in the local pub. That broke me. It was always difficult when she was upset that she didn't have any money left over at the end of the month, and I knew that I should have. It's always difficult when she told me about places she'd like to go, and I could have afforded to have taken them if I didn't have this addiction. But to see her scrimping and saving and having to put such a cheap item back in a supermarket shop because we didn't have enough money. Yeah, of course, I could justify this, and I did. And I did it possibly in a really horrible, defensive and conflictory way, that this was my money. I earn more, but I pay more into the joint account. Therefore, I can do what I want with my money. Yeah, but what I wanted with my money wasn't what I was doing with it. What I would have loved to have done with my money is give the woman I loved all these things that sometimes she wanted, sometimes she needed, sometimes she got upset that she had to live without. And it is important to express that, like I say, she doesn't live a luxurious life. But if we wanted a weekend away in Norfolk or on the coast or whatever, I know so simply that I could have afforded it had I not been gambling. So why am I banging on about this? Well, to those people who are concerned about their partner's gambling, if they are losing all of their disposable income fairly rapidly, then that is a big red flag. But the other red flag that this story should bring up is that if whenever the subject of money is brought up, your partner gets very, very defensive, and particularly if they use the reasoning that we have a roof over our heads, we have food and the bills are paid, therefore there isn't a problem, then that could also be a red flag. If they are very secretive about how much they earn, that could be a red flag, because I was earning substantially more than I ever would have let on. But if I was to let on, then that would have desperately cut into my gambling funds, which, even as I say it to myself now, just makes me feel like an awful, awful human being. And whilst I believe that I'm not an awful, awful human being, gambling can turn us into that person. So these are red flags to look out for if you're in a relationship with a gambler. But if you are also a gambler in a relationship, then just look at it from the other side. Are you getting overly defensive whenever the subject of money is brought up with your partner? Are you constantly regretting your decisions or your gambling actions because your partner really, really would like to do XYZ or to buy XYZ for the house, often mutual stuff? And both parties, both sides, if you're the gambler or you're in a relationship with a gambler, you do have to ask yourself, is this what you want from life? Because if you're the gambler and you continue down this road, this is all you're going to have. Yes, you might maintain a roof over your head. Yes, your bills might get paid. You might not have people knocking on your door chasing you for money. All right. But you're always going to be in this cycle. Skint near the end of the month, getting by, scrimping, not having luxuries, not enjoying life, not getting anything out of it. And if you're on the other side and you're in the relationship with the gambler, is this what you want? Or do you have other plans? Are there things you want to do together? Are there things you want to do on your own? Because all the time you're in this relationship and that person continues to gamble, you'll get older and you'll get older and you'll get older. And if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Now, I'm not saying if you're in a relationship with a gambler, then end it. I'm not even saying go out and issue an ultimatum. All right, but this is a conversation that needs to be had. But I think it's a conversation from the gambler's perspective that we need to have internally first. I bleat on and on and on, and only because I believe it to be so important. But I bleat on about the fact that quitting gambling is essential for many of us. It's something we need to do, but in order for it to be successful, we have to want to do it. So rather than think about our want and our desire to quit gambling and to get into recovery, think about a want and desire to have a better life with your partner. And that could apply if you don't have a partner. Maybe you want to find a partner and have a better life. All right. Use maybe the motivation of the other things that you want instead of the motivation to want to stop. Because whilst you're continuing to gamble, your life will ever be thus so. All right, mine was for years and years and years, and I often made the excuse, and like I say, I got seriously defensive because I thought we were doing okay. We had a roof over our heads, we were eating, bills were paid. Therefore, no catastrophe, no disaster, responsible husband. All right, but I realised that our life would always be this. It would always be just this monotonous month after month after month. And this isn't to belittle or make light of the fact that so many people are struggling financially at the moment. All right, I am not earning as much now as I was back then. I had a reasonable amount of money coming in from various ventures at that time, and it's all gone. Our lives could have been so much better. So whilst I continue to try and build myself back up financially, all right, I want to ensure that when that money does start coming in, if that money does start coming in, then I can use it to improve the life of myself and the life of the people I love, rather than use it to perpetuate an addiction which will stop me from living life at all. Stay safe, stay sane. If you want to support the channel, there'll be a Patreon link below. If not, just like, subscribe, do all that great YouTubery stuff. I'm off before I cry. Take care.